My name is Dr. Briana James. I work at the National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute at the NIH in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow. I would say that I was always a curious child. My parents, I would ask them a question, they would give me an answer, and I was the one to be like, well, why? And then they'd give me another answer, and I'd continue, why? Well, why is that? How does it work? And that sounds pretty annoying, I'm sure it was. But my parents, I'm grateful that they very much, they nurtured this curiosity. In fact, I remember in the first grade, my mom used to take me to UVA, the University of Virginia, on Saturdays for this science camp where we would do things like study earthworms or talk about the planets and things like that. And I thought it was so cool. And I mean, at that very young age, I was like, I'm a scientist. So from there, I was hooked. And who would know 14, 15 years later, I would actually be graduating from that same university with a BS in engineering science and getting ready to start my PhD. I would say the moment was that science camp where we were challenged to ask questions and we had sort of like little baby experiments of like, oh, well, we can design something to figure out why this works. I would say that was like the turning point for me. So first, second grade, I knew that I loved science and wanted to do something related with that. I study asthma, which is this chronic airway disease that causes difficulty in breathing. It's traditionally treated with steroids, but there's a subset of patients where this treatment does not work. And that's because people with severe asthma have an entirely different biology that's progressing their disease. And so I work on identifying these differences. Specifically, my research investigates how the transport and bioactivity of lipids and lipid-related proteins progress severe asthma. And so my goal is to identify specific cellular pathways that can be targeted so that we can design treatments and offer relief to people with severe asthma. I had plans, but there was definitely some twists and turns. So like I mentioned before, I knew at a pretty young age, I'm going to be a scientist, I'm going to be a doctor. And that pathway is pretty well defined, it's pretty straightforward. But when I started pursuing it in college and in graduate school, I definitely faced some challenges. My environment's changed. You're probably well aware that there's not a lot of people of color in STEM fields, as well as professors or people who are pursuing it. So at that time, I found myself in environments where I was the only or one of very little Black people in the classroom, at a conference, in a lab. And that, along with just the rigor of research of STEM, it made me really feel some imposter syndrome. I definitely started feeling some self-doubt. Not sure if I really had this, what it took to achieve my goals. So that was definitely some lower points of my journey. But I was also really intentional with creating a community. So when I first started undergrad, I was a part of this pre-engineering group called Bridge. And it was a program that essentially had minority students who were going to do engineering. We took calculus classes, we took chemistry classes, but it was also an opportunity for you to make friends so that when you started school, you already had a group of people that you knew, some of the professors were familiar with you, so you felt less intimidated to go into office hours, things such as that. So I built a community of my own colleagues there. And then in grad school, I was very intentional with finding similar programs that nurtured minority students in STEM who were going for PhDs. I looked for mentors, and just having this community really helped keep me grounded. It helped me feel like I could do this. It helped me acknowledge that imposter syndrome was a real thing, but that it can be managed and that I can beat it. I actually hope to transition into science policy, but this interest is actually still related to the research I'm doing now. So you probably are aware of this. Asthma has a significant health disparity for people of color. And similar to what we were discussing before, well, related to that, it has a lot to do with discriminatory housing policies that sequestered Black and Brown populations into low-income areas that suffer from high pollution and low air quality. And there's plenty of studies that have shown that these type of factors can trigger asthma or progress asthma severity. But the fortunate thing is these are all societal factors. They're things that we can address. There are things that we can change. And so I'm really interested in utilizing science and communicating the research to lawmakers, to policymakers, so that we can make and support regulations, policies, funding that are going to not only address this disparity, but also issues that are important to environmental justice and public health. So that's the goal. I love that we can contribute new knowledge to the world. You know, we're contributing to something that's bigger than us, that's going to last after us. So like even findings from like the most like minute paper in a low impact journal is going to be built upon. You know, it's going to further our understanding into something that we don't know about nature. And I think that's just amazing. As far as my advice for future scientists, I would say stay curious, be persistent, because being a scientist, there are going to be ups, but there's going to be even more downs. It teaches you to have a tough skin because you're going to fail a lot, but that's fine. That's okay. Everyone does it. It's part of the process. And I would say that being successful in this field doesn't require that you know all the answers. It's really just about asking the right questions. So if you have a passion for it, stick with it, do it.